Hi, everyone, and welcome to CE Chat. Today, we're graciously hosted by the Cloud OnAir folks. They run a webinar every Tuesday. Make sure you dial in weekly. They do a lot of exciting topics. My name is Nick Orlov, and I am a customer engineer with Google Cloud. And with me is Chris Talbot. Chris, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure thing. Hello, everyone. Chris. I'm the product marketing manager for the storage and data transfer portfolio at Google Cloud. And today we're going to talk about how to get your data into Google Cloud, because there's a bunch of different options for migrating data, some of which might be relevant to a particular workload or a particular situation that you have in your data center or with another cloud provider. But the topic begs the question, why do you want to get your data into Google Cloud Platform in the first place? What can you do with it?
Yeah, actually, that's very relevant. So exactly to your point, to step back and talk about why you should or how to basically optimize moving your data, it's best to talk about why move your data in the first place. So until recently, most customers were interested in moving workloads to cloud because of the infrastructure optimization. So you have an application that's running in place A, whether that's on-prem, maybe a co-location or something, and you want to move it to the cloud so you can utilize benefits of cost efficiency. Maybe you need to scale your workload, something like that. Mm-hmm. You want to store some backups in the cloud, maybe some bursting. But recently, we've definitely seen a lot of customers be interested in the more digital transformation piece of moving your workload to the cloud. And I know digital transformation kind of sounds like a little buzzword, but actually it's really true. So we're seeing lots of conversations with customers in executive level conversations, board level conversations about how can we leverage some of the native benefits of cloud that we're not really utilizing today. So whether those benefits being moving all your data so that you can actually analyze your data. So if you have terabytes or potentially petabytes of data, it might not be quite so cost efficient to do that on-prem. Maybe it's using Google's machine learning capabilities. We have some really impressive natural APIs or capabilities with TensorFlow, and leveraging that in our cloud is much more beneficial because we've already done the legwork for you. Yeah. Other things, maybe hosting your application, integration with partners, scaling out for employees, making things a lot easier for them. There's lots of different reasons, but today we're here to talk about efficiently migrating your data. So that implies that there's somewhat of a challenge. So Chris, what kind of challenges are there with moving your data?
There's a lot of challenges with moving your data, largely due to the world we live in when it comes to data creation. So companies, individuals, governments, organizations, everyone is creating data at an incredible rate. Pick your favorite analyst. We see data growth percentages in like 50% year over year. We talk to plenty of customers who are actually doubling their data year over year. And when you're dealing with that much data, it becomes challenging to move it because there's all sorts of complexities involved in moving data from point A to point B. A lot of times you run into network challenges, right? So it's actually can be very expensive to upgrade your network. You may not have dedicated bandwidth to just dedicate it all to moving a large amount of data. And it takes really specialized resources to start to build new network infrastructure. So a lot of customers are struggling with that. They're also struggling with just something that's in the nature of moving data, in that it comes with a lot of specific challenges because you want to ensure that the data that you're moving when it ends up in its destination is exactly the same as where it was in its source, right? So there's a whole process through checksumming, running into firewalls, like ensuring that that is complete, and the data integrity as it moves along the way can be very, very complicated. And then just generally, everyone is strapped for time and resources, and moving large amounts of data can take a lot of time and a lot of resources.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. And even when you're incredibly successful, like Evernote was in migrating essentially their entire infrastructure over to Google Cloud Platform, you can see it's a really challenging process. So Evernote actually wrote this incredible 5-part blog series about their migration effort. So I encourage everyone to go and check it out. And they describe exactly what goes into doing a migration of this size, which was over 3 petabytes of data. And 5 billion notes and attachments within Evernote.
Including my notes somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And they dedicated a team of 8 engineers and a serious amount of time to managing this migration effort. Now, we know that you, as customers and prospects, want to get your data to the cloud, and not everyone has the resources available like an Evernote or can dedicate all of their time to this huge migration. So we want to offer solutions, regardless where you are on that journey, to get your data to the cloud efficiently. So let's talk about some of those solutions that are available from Google Cloud. And we'll talk first about why the challenge is so difficult for moving such a large amount of data, like 3 petabytes that Evernote did.
Yeah, I want to ask, so 3 petabytes in 70 days sounds really impressive, but how do I kind of perceptualize that in terms of like what that equates to? So can you lay out just kind of associating what 3 petabytes is like and network speeds and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. First, we can talk about the one challenge that we all face in moving data. And no matter how hard we try, even as Google, like we're not going to break the speed of light barrier, which is essentially the determining factor when you're moving data from point A to point B.
Makes sense.
So regardless where you are on this spectrum of data sizes, you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, you're going to come up to essentially an opposing network bandwidth in order to move that size. So there's sort of this dichotomy between amount of data and network availability, and you find yourself somewhere on this graph for a particular data set. So in the customers that I've talked to, and I'm sure you've talked to too, we see that a typical enterprise has data sets or data corpuses of the single-digit petabytes. Let's call it like an average, right? And you can see as you go along the spectrum for the available network, we oftentimes see people in the 100 megabits or maybe a gigabit per second line, right? So drag your eye down to the middle of that graph. You could be facing somewhere in the neighborhood of 124 days to 3 years to move your data to Google Cloud Platform. I bet that your business doesn't want to run in that kind of time frame.
Yeah,
right?
If my CEO is telling me that we need to transform our business, I can't tell him, well, we need to wait 3 months, 4 months, a year to do it. So yeah, that makes sense.
So regardless of where you are on the spectrum, both network availability and the amount of data that you want to move, Google Cloud wants to provide solutions for you to get your data to the cloud quickly and efficiently.
Cool.
So let's talk about a few of these options that are available from Google Cloud Platform. And there's basically 4 core solutions that we have for migrating data into Google Cloud Platform. And we're really talking about just the act of migrating data. So not professional services, engagement where you would migrate VMs and all the things that are like associated with that. This is physically moving like bits from one place to another. So the first one, which almost all of our customers use in some form or fashion, is GSUtil, which is a command line interface for moving data, typically from on-premises into Google Cloud Storage.
Okay.
The second option that we have is a transfer service, and I like to refer to this as our cloud-to-cloud transfer service. Basically, if you have data today that is in cloud storage, whether from another cloud vendor like Microsoft or Amazon, or you have it somewhere in Google Cloud Storage, a particular region that you might want to move it from, this is a great solution for that. The third option, which I'm actually going to spend some more time later in this presentation going through because we just reached a major milestone with this product in reaching general availability, is Transfer Appliance, which is a relatively new product from Google Cloud that physically moves data. It's really good for when you have situations where you have a lot of data and not great network availability.
Yep.
And then finally, we have a solution that helps automate the transfer of data from marketing tools into BigQuery for analysis, because a lot of companies are focusing on the data that they capture about their customers and prospects, and they want to analyze that data.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And for these latter 3 options, we also have many partners in our network that can help in these sort of situations too.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So let's talk really quickly about Cloud Storage Transfer Service. So basically, very simply, this product or service, it moves data from a source to what we call a data sink. Now, you could call it a sink, a bathtub, a pool, whatever you want to call it. What it's going to end up being in is a Google Cloud Storage bucket. So you are moving data from a cloud storage source to a Google Cloud Storage bucket. It's really good to use this product when you want to synchronize your data from source to your Google Cloud Storage bucket. You expect things to change. You want to make sure the source and the destination match. It also automates the deletion of source data once you move it, or vice versa, right?
Oh, that's
so
great.
You can, for lack of a better word, it essentially has checksumming between the source and the destination of your data. And for those customers who are already using Google Cloud Storage and say you want to move from one region to another region, or you want to tier a large amount of data from hot storage to cold storage, it's also good for that kind of use case. And BigQuery Data Transfer Service, like I mentioned, is the tool for marketers, right? So lots of marketers are using BigQuery to analyze what their customers are doing. And this tool is fully managed data import service for Google BigQuery. So you see some of the very popular ads products on the left-hand side of the screen: YouTube, AdWords, DoubleClick. BigQuery can automate the transfer of data from those products directly into BigQuery.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what's nice is that BigQuery is used for all sorts of different data sets, data types for analyzing data, whether it's ad hoc, batch analysis, streaming, etc. But it's not just for like the data that you use through your marketing data or what have you. So we have customers who import their data with SaaS sources. For instance, if you have marketing data, you have CRM data, maybe event-driven data. Or maybe you have databases, so SQL data, whether it's a MySQL, a Postgres, a SQL Server, or even Oracle, finding some way of basically moving that data so that you can perform lots of analysis on multiple data sets, combining things together to get one rational picture. And even in your existing data warehouses, so if you have Teradata, Netezza, etc., it's really a great source of basically housing your data lake. And I like how you called it your sink, your pool, etc. It's definitely applicable because we meet customers wherever they are. And the benefit of BigQuery is that we scale to meet their demands. So whether you have just a couple gigs, a couple terabytes, a couple petabytes, dozens of petabytes, we can definitely meet you where you're at with BigQuery. And we have partners, as you can see on the screen, who are able to help migrate that data. So whether you are working with a SaaS application or storage application in terms of databases, we have a bunch of partners who are able to help migrate that data efficiently and move it into BigQuery for further analysis.
That's great.
Oh, so I guess let me ask the question of, so let's say that I have a slow network and I want to migrate a whole lot of data over. What are my options?
Yeah, well, we have a product for you. Transfer Appliance, I said I want to take a little bit more time to talk about Transfer Appliance because it's a brand new product to the portfolio, essentially. It's our rackable high-capacity storage server for shipping large amounts of data to Google Cloud rather than sending it over the network. So you can see on the screen right here is the 100 terabyte of raw capacity version, which with compression you can achieve, potentially double that amount of data on the device and send us 200 terabytes. We also have a 4U version, 480 terabytes of raw capacity, and this device could move up to a petabyte of data to the cloud. And what's amazing is it does it much faster than a typical network would do it. So as we watch this screen build out, we can see Transfer Appliance could move a petabyte of data potentially, if you're really fast with the shipping and making sure you get it back to us in time, in 43 days. Compare that to what you could do over a typical network. That's like 96% faster to move your data. So back to your comment about CEOs want to move at the speed of digital transformation. This is a product that could help you do that and get your data to the cloud faster.
That's cool.
It's also a really simple process, similar to e-commerce and online shopping. So all you have to do is go into the Google Cloud Console. You request a Transfer Appliance. We'll actually reach out and work with you to size the right appliance for your workload. A lot of folks might have small amounts of data, and perhaps Transfer Appliance isn't necessarily the best solution. We could probably do it with GSUtil or some networking solutions. Perhaps they fall somewhere in between that 100 terabytes and 480 terabytes, and then they don't know, should I order 4 of one of the other? So we'll help you out with that, with those considerations. Once you request the appliance, we ship it via regular shipping carriers like FedEx and UPS. You receive the appliance. You actually, if you want to, can rack it in your data center, which is one of the reasons why we built Transfer Appliance the way that we did, because we know, one, lots of folks have existing data centers, and two, those data centers don't come with space for various devices to be littered around the floor.
True.
And three, if you're moving a petabyte of data, it's going to have to live there for a little while as it captures all of the data that you want to move. So you can actually rack Transfer Appliance in your data center, connect it to the network, fill it up with up to a petabyte of data if you buy the big one, and then you ship the appliance back to Google, where we stage that in a Google Cloud Storage bucket, where the data then gets decrypted, because it's encrypted the entire time.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
So your data is secure as you transfer it. And then all you do is you log back into Google Cloud Storage, you supply the decryption keys, decrypt that data, and we'll have it available in a Google Cloud Storage bucket, and then can make that data available to all of the services that you may want to use from Google Cloud Platform.
Nice. And these are decryption keys that I, as a customer, set myself, and so Google doesn't know like what data I'm sending or has any access to any of that stuff?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because as the data transfers via FedEx across the country, wherever you may be sending it, we want that data to be protected, so it's going to be encrypted the entire time.
Cool.
And once the data transfer is complete, the appliance is erased per NIST standards, which you feel confident with.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mentioned this product recently hit a milestone of becoming generally available, and this happened about 2 weeks ago at the end of June. And a few new features were included in general availability that I think would be super interesting to the audience. One is you can now mount your transfer appliance when you receive it as network attached storage.
Oh,
so
nice.
We know probably anywhere from a third to half of the workloads in a typical enterprise are referencing some sort of file storage. So this might make it really easy for you to drag and drop your files or rsync those files from where they are today into Transfer Appliance. We released an in-console request process, so you can see and request Transfer Appliance in the same console that you're using Google Cloud Storage and all the other services. And then an end-to-end integrity check. So this goes back to one of those challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. You want to ensure that the bits in the source and the bits in the destination are exactly the same, because you want any application that's referencing them, any analyst who wants to analyze that data to ensure they're looking at the same data. So we have an end-to-end integrity check to make sure that you're confident in doing so.
Yep.
So Transfer Appliance has been in beta for about a year, and through that process, we were able to learn from the many customers who used it some really cool use cases that Transfer Appliance is particularly successful with. So I thought I'd bring that up to get the ideas flowing about ways that folks may use Transfer Appliance today. So one of the really interesting ones is to use it to seed a proof of concept for another Google Cloud product. So you mentioned machine learning and AI initiatives. Lots of customers want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
We have lots of APIs like ML Vision or the image recognition APIs. So if you want to test those on, say, like a large corpus of images that you have on premises today, say a 100 terabyte library of images, like a good way to send that to us and check out some of our machine learning solutions would be to use Transfer Appliance to transfer that data.
Okay, makes sense.
One that we didn't necessarily expect but bubbled up as a really cool use case is to collect data from other vendors or research organizations and bring that to Google Cloud for analysis. So you can actually send Transfer Appliance like out to geographic or weather data vendors, collect data there and bring it in. I'll talk about a couple customers in a second that are using it in that manner. Lots of folks have a transfer process today that's usually disparate, very manual. You're collecting tapes, you're restoring those tapes, you may be pulling data from a NAS source on-prem, and then you're kind of getting all that data together and then sending it over. Transfer Appliance can help with that. Of course, data center migrations as you move to the cloud. And through the data center migration, what we find customers doing is they're taking the opportunity to kind of clean their storage house, like delete the data that's no longer needed and only move the good stuff, which transfer appliance can be a catalyst for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then finally, what is probably most often used for, and the best use case, is really dense, rich, large amounts of content. So media archives, images, regulatory content that you need to keep for 7 years because you're SEC regulated, for instance, right? You can move that data to the cloud using transfer appliance.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mentioned I talk about a few interesting customers. This first one, Schmidt Ocean Institute, it's a nonprofit research organization. It's really interesting. They're actually the only research vessel with a high-performance computing center on board.
Wow,
Yeah.
while they're sailing and everything.
While they are sailing. And what that offers the researchers is access to technology like in the moment when they're gathering data, and also the ability to capture more and different types of data that they never had before. So what they do is they actually mount transfer appliance on board the RV Falcor as it goes on its expedition. They collect all of the data to transfer appliance, and then when they come back to port, that data gets sent to Google Cloud Storage, and then that's how they distribute the data that they collected to all of the researchers.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah. Airbus, and it's in particular, it's Airbus Defense and Space Geo arm of Airbus. They use transfer appliance to really lift and improve their storage architecture. So they have access to some really exclusive radar and different types of satellites, and they're capturing these Earth observation images, and they're providing access to that library of images to the world. You can see the image on the screen is actually a Black Rock City from Burning Man.
I noticed.
So they're capturing all these amazing images. Obviously, that accounts for a lot of data that they were collecting on premises. So they use transfer appliance to move that data to the cloud. Yeah. Beatport has a really interesting use case, and they want to be able to serve their library of music content as fast as possible to listeners. So they use transfer appliance to move the entire digital library that they have into Google Cloud Storage because they knew that Google Cloud Storage performance, in particular with content serving, is the best out there. And then finally, I mentioned that interesting use case of collecting research from vendors. So this is actually a Google X company called Makani. And what they do, you can see in the image, is they fly wind kites really high up in the air because it turns out the wind blows harder if you go up a few hundred meters, right? So they can generate energy faster with turbines that are 100 meters into the air than you could in something that's just a typical windmill, for instance.
Wow, that's got to be an interesting challenge to kind of deal with.
Yeah, but it's really important that they pick the right spots, right? Because you need to pick an area that weather-wise and wind-wise is appropriate. So they use transfer appliance to collect data from research vendors, bring it into Google Cloud, and then analyze and run some models on that to pick where they're going to tether their wind kites. Now, regardless of what your use case is, what kind of data you're moving, it's going to end up in Google Cloud Storage. So just take a second to introduce or remind folks of what Google Cloud Storage is. It's our object storage solution. It's one product, which is very important because that's differentiated in the marketplace. That essentially comes in 4 flavors based on the availability or redundancy that you need for your particular workload.
Okay.
So from left to right on this screen, you have multi-regional, which means geo-redundant storage, regional, which means in one particular region where your data is stored, nearline, and cold line, which are essentially cold and archival storage options. And the price follows the availability from left to right on this screen.
And Chris, I've got a question for you. And just as a reminder to our audience, there's live Q&A at the bottom, so make sure you're typing these questions, and we'll answer some questions at the end. But I frequently hear this question from customers of, so there's 4 different tiers of GCS, the multi-regional, regional, nearline, and cold line. That kind of implies that as you tier things down, you're getting a degraded performance. I mean, how does performance work in terms of these different 4 flavors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a really awesome answer from Google because it doesn't change. So the user experience of requesting an object in multi-regional or requesting an object in cold line will be exactly the same. It will come back in milliseconds of latency because it's essentially a single API across these. We just allow you the option to tier that storage based on costs for stuff that's not going to get accessed as frequently.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Cool. So I have obviously a lot of customers who are using GCS, and so I think it's valuable to talk about the different reasons people typically use GCS, and those generally fall into the 3 buckets that you see on the screen. So first being content storage and delivery. So GCS is essentially limitless object storage. So whether you're storing videos like Vimeo, music like Spotify, websites, multimedia, maybe your mobile web applications, it is a fantastic place for storing your content for the delivery through, whether it be through CDNs or, like you said, through the incredible latency that GCS naturally provides. The second big category is around data analytics and general compute. So if anyone's familiar with Hadoop, for instance, or GCE, you can leverage Dataproc to store all of your back-end analytics data that you're going to crawl through, create Hadoop clusters, destroy Hadoop clusters, et cetera. And it really helps in terms of being able to scale storage and compute independently. And so we have a bunch of customers, for instance, the Broad Institute, who uses GCS for doing some genomics data, because obviously those genomics data sets are massive. Or Philips as another example of being able to collect all the IT sensor data from everyone really across the globe, and being able to surface it up through the Philips app, et cetera, being able to drive a lot more insights and capabilities to their customers than what would have normally been possible. And then the final category being kind of the general backup, archival, and storage repository for your data. So if you are interested in, for instance, like a hybrid cloud approach or a multi-cloud approach, being able to store your data in multiple places, whether that be through a backup, through an archive. And what's nice is that we work with a whole bunch of different partners, for instance, Dell EMC, NetApp, Veeam, Veritas, et cetera, where you can essentially leverage your existing solution on-prem or in the cloud, and then configure as a backup repository GCS so that you can store your backup data in GCS more efficiently.
Yeah, most of those most common backup providers, you could just choose GCS as a drop-down.
Exactly, yeah, I've done it before.
So I wanted to kind of double-click on one point. I mentioned one product for GCS, which is really important in the storage world, because when it comes to storage, we want a lot of rich features, right? You want to have some of your data being geo-redundant in case of a disaster. You probably want some of your data to be pushed to the edge, close to your users as possible, so that the experience is really, really fast. You want to have some of your data in cold storage so that you don't have to pay as much because it's not getting used for the next 3 years, right? So with Google Cloud Storage, you get all of those features in one single product, in a single API. Where if you went out in the marketplace, typically you're going to have to purchase multiple products in order to achieve the same amount of functionality. So I kind of wanted to prove that really quick in a demo.
Let's do it.
We're going to talk in particular about edge caching. So obviously, lots of customers serve content to users, right? And they serve content to those users throughout the globe. So what I'm going to essentially mimic is a user requesting content from far away, and let's see how fast Google Cloud Storage can get it to them.
Put it to the test.
Yeah, so we're going to make this as hard as possible. We're going to choose the region that's farthest away from us today. So anyone can go to this site. It's called gcping.com, and it basically will tell me how far away these regions are. So right now it thinks that I'm farthest away from Frankfurt and Belgium, Sydney, Finland. Great. So we can choose the Belgium region.
Okay.
Now I'll have to continue my Google Cloud Shell. So first I will create a bucket. Actually, for the sake of time, I'm looking at the screen. I'm going to use one of the buckets I've already created. So if we go back to this, see one that's pretty far that I already have a bucket for. So Mumbai is actually really, really far away. So 305 milliseconds. So I have a Mumbai bucket, thankfully. And we'll take a look at the data that's in this Mumbai bucket. So for those who aren't familiar, object storage works essentially. You have buckets and you put data into that, and you put objects into that. So I have a bucket in Mumbai region. I have a few images here available to me. A photo, I was doing a demo in Tel Aviv not too long ago, so I had a picture of Tel Aviv, a Google wind farm photo, And I actually have this photo of this this Lego figurine in a chicken suit.
Okay, as you would.
As we would. So I'm going to ask, once I reconnect the shell, I'm essentially going to ask the system how long it takes for me standing here to request that image, the Lego chicken image from Mumbai.
Yeah, because it's currently stored
and
in
go
Mumbai.
round trip.
Okay.
So I have the script already run this time curl. It's going to essentially give me that information. And we will wait a second. And then here you can see it takes 1.6 seconds.
Okay.
Right? Which is actually super fast when
Yeah,
you think about
not too
how
bad for
far that
media.
data is traveling. But with Google Cloud Storage, we can do this much, much faster because we have edge caching actually built into our solution. So once I share this image publicly, I'll run the curl again. We'll do it one more time. Down to 20 milliseconds.
Jeez.
Because
1.6 to 0.02.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's like 99-something% probably.
Yeah.
So because the GCS recognized that I'm the user who's requesting this information, and it wants to push that image as far, as close to me as possible. So probably in an edge location somewhere here in Mountain View.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So let's get back over to the slides. And let's talk about the first option that we introduced, GSUtil, and some of the performance tricks associated with that.
Yeah, definitely. So I frequently hear this comment from customers of, I have a lot of data to transfer. I've decided on GSUtil. Are there some ways of optimizing GSUtil so that I can migrate the data easier? And the answer is yes. So there's a couple slides that I'll go through, kind of tips and tricks on how to do it. First thing to be mindful of is location, location, location. So just like you showed, if you have all your data stored in the US and you create a storage bucket in Mumbai, and then you replicate all your data to Mumbai, probably not going to be the most efficient way of doing it. In fact, we have the site cloud.google.com/about/locations, where we have currently over 16 regions. I think it's 49 zones in 35 different countries. And over 100 points of presence. So definitely find the region that's closest to you. In fact, later this summer, we're opening up a region in Los Angeles, which is pretty awesome. So make sure you stay up to date with the regions that are available. Secondly, if you're uploading a lot of small files, you may not know this, but every object storage out there has some sort of latency or some sort of small overhead that happens when you actually push a file to the ending destination or the ending bucket. So being able to push, let's say, 500 small files of 125 kilobytes in size actually gets associated with a large amount of an unnecessary overhead. So if you consider GSUtil's multi-threaded option, the GSUtil-M option, you can actually multi-thread all of these smaller files into one big push to GCS. And as you can see on the graph on the left, we did a test where we actually saw over four times the amount of throughput just by using this -M option. So definitely something to consider if you have a bunch of small files. Now, conversely, if you have maybe some really large files, so you're doing some video uploads, some multimedia uploads, maybe some really large log files or something like that, there's another option of actually breaking one large object into multiple smaller objects, and it's called composite parallel uploads. So we have this another GSUtil option where essentially when you perform an upload of, let's say, one massive file, so on the left you can see a 500 megabyte file, we actually split that up into multiple chunks, upload those in parallel, and then once they all arrive in GCS, GCS actually combines them together and then performs a checksum to make sure that everything got compiled successfully. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we see quite a bit of performance improvement by using this option compared to the default option. Now, one thing to be aware of, though, is that you should not be using this for nearline or cold line storage. The reason why, pretty simple, is that when you upload all these small little chunks, and then it combines those chunks into one big chunk, it actually deletes those individual chunks. And with nearline and cold line storage, because these are longer-term storage mediums, it's meant to stay, your objects are meant to stay for 30 days, 90 days, depending on the storage class. So if you're performing a composite parallel upload, you're actually, behind the scenes, deleting each of those individual chunks, as they get combined into one big object. And so you'll get charged essentially for those individual chunks that have to be deleted. So makes sense, just something to be aware of. Another thing to keep in mind is you have to be considerate of sequential files. So if you're uploading, for instance, log files or sensor data that uses a traditional or standard kind of naming convention, what happens under the covers is that you're actually uploading these sequential files to maybe the same backend servers within GCS. So you can actually be throttling yourself by just your naming standard alone. So something to keep in mind is maybe use like a hash in front of the file names, or maybe rename your file folders, stuff like that. As you can see from the screenshot on the bottom, we saw a 2x improvement by simply renaming files. So another thing to keep in mind. And then lastly, obviously moving your data is important, but what if you have like an entire application that you want to move? You want to lift and shift application A from your data center to GCP, and you want it to remain exactly like application A. Well, fortunately, we have a whole bunch of partners that we work with. For instance, Velostrada, Cloud Endure, who can do that for you. So if you have a Windows server, you have a Linux server, maybe you have a VM environment, you can perform that lift and shift quite easily.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's fantastic. So with that, we're going to stay tuned for live Q&A. So we'll be back in less than a minute, and we'll answer your questions.
Cool.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So thank you everyone for writing up a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah.
We have some good ones here. So Chris, I guess I'll ask you the first question. When should you use GSUtil versus the storage transfer service?
Great question. Super simple answers.
Okay.
So when you're moving data from on-premises into the cloud, and you don't have the challenges that we talked about, which would lead you to transfer appliance, use GSUtil.
Okay.
Because most of our developers especially use GSUtil to move their data. If you want to go from one cloud storage location, whether that be in another cloud storage provider or us, to a Google Cloud Storage, use transfer service.
Okay, pretty clear cut. Cool. Well, I guess on to the second question. How can I get the status or other information on transfers? Can this information be visualized?
So status updates and further information on the progress of your transfer, that's something what we're thinking about integrating into the console in the future.
Okay.
We have standard tracking associated with the appliance through the shipping vendor.
Okay.
And that information it cannot be visualized today, obviously.
Okay. I guess I'll take the third one. Would you recommend the transfer appliance to migrate on-prem VMware VMs to Google Cloud? So the transfer appliance is more for data itself rather than applications. Yeah. So we actually have a great solution specifically for VMware called Velostrata. Velostrata was actually a company that Google acquired, I think it was about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. But it's really easy to basically migrate your VMware VMs by essentially installing a little agent, I think on vCenter. And then you have some new options in VMware to essentially create the destination where you're going to replicate your VM to. You'll, in the background, synchronize the data, and then we make it very easy for you to perform that cutover migration once you have all the networking, the firewalls, all the kind of ancillary pieces set up. Make it really easy for you. So, and by the way, the Velostrata solution is totally free for performing migrations into GCP. I mean, obviously there's GCP costs of like running your VM on GCP, but the actual act of migration through Velostrata is totally free. So definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess I'll take number 4 again as well. Rather than uploading my data onto the transfer appliance, can I just ship you a copy of my storage array? This is interesting because I used to be in the storage industry, so I'm very familiar with the storage arrays. So the answer is unfortunately no. You can't just ship us your EMC or your NetApp or what have you storage array. At least you can't ship us it. But we do work with partners like Iron Mountain where you can ship your storage array to our partners, and they have incredibly fast backbone network connection to GCP, and they can suck all the data off your storage array and then put it right into GCS. Yeah. And I guess I'll have you take the last question. What if I have data that changes frequently? Can I still use the transfer appliance?
Yeah, you can use it, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. So a great use case would be to use transfer appliance to seed whatever that workload is that's going to change frequently. So let's take backup as an example. You could take all of your historical backups, move them with transfer appliance, and then incrementally back up over the network from there.
Ah, okay.
Right. So transfer appliance can actually accelerate the process of moving your data, even if it's going to change further.
Okay, cool. Well, that's about it for time. So thank you everyone for joining CE Chat. Our next session is data science for social change. That sounds really interesting. Cool. I'm going to be tuning into that. So I hope everyone sticks around and watches that. Until then, I guess see you at CE Chat next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.